best part of doing activism and outreach is that you could have walked by that person and they would have never thought, potentially never thought about it,
Yeah.
and could go their whole lives without even considering the plight of animals. Just the ability to change people's lives when you talk to them, and also have, you know, your own eyes opened up to what people's fears are, is amazing. And you can really only get that from talking to people.
What's up, everybody? Natalie here with Sheena, better known as Very Vegan Mom. So how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. So basically for this video, we're going to do an interview about kind of the beginnings of outreach and what that looks like, and putting it on YouTube. And we want it to be super practical and actionable and stuff like that. So yeah, let's dive right in. So when I was watching your content, I was kind of struck by like how good you are already. And it's easy to think like, oh, she just started, like I'll never be that good. But you've actually been doing outreach for quite some time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been doing outreach probably for about 4 years, but for the first probably year or so, I just would hold the screen and you kind of watch how other people are doing outreach. And then I probably started doing outreach probably after about a year or so, just doing those little bits that you're comfortable with. And I think I was more comfortable then when I started doing my own outreach, once I started attending cubes. I started doing chalking and having a bunch of like resources with me. And then that was a good opportunity to like, people actually stop and they want to see what you're chalking. Usually they love what you're chalking. And then that's a great opportunity to talk to people. They like kind of mixing that little bit of, you're doing artwork. And if you're able to do artwork, which I'm not really, but like, you know, I looked at a bunch of like, you know, you look at easy kids drawings to do and you chalk those.
Just like a little really pig, you know, with like stick figures.
Like, look up easy chicken, easy pig, easy fish, and you come up with these bright, beautiful, bold colors. And yeah, so easy to do. And just started talking. I got more comfortable with talking to people doing that. And then slowly moving into talking to people at cubes.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's one of the things I like to recommend to people a lot is like, don't start out just like filming street outreach. Like it's probably better to work on talking to people and getting a bit more comfortable. Like I love the chalk idea and just kind of talking to people who walk by, and kind of starting a little bit smaller, I think is always a good idea. So what was the transition from doing that to YouTube? Like, was that pretty daunting as well?
Yeah, I mean, like most of us, you know, that think about doing YouTube, you think about it for months, sometimes years. And I thought about it for like 2 years. So pretty solidly 2 years. And like every day I was like, once I saw pretty much your channel and Debug Your Brain, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, this is the kind of outreach I do anyway. And the type of conversations I have, I need to just get out there and film it, because I know that more people can see it that way, and the potential of changing people's minds is so much greater. I kind of thought about it for a long time. And then I guess what I really did is I really sat down and I thought, what is outreach and making videos look like for me? What am I comfortable doing? And then I worked around that, because not all of us are going to be comfortable doing the style maybe you do, or what I do, or what, you know, Justin does. But outreach might look like something totally different. So see what your personality, what you're good at, and see how you can work, you know, YouTube into that, or work making videos into that. We all have so much to learn from the little bits we get from each other. And even if you don't think there's much point in doing it, just, think about how best you do outreach, and like really sit down and think about that, and then kind of just pull in little bits of what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, is to play to your strengths. And that's definitely something that I thought about. And I think we have this in common, that we were both kind of like pretty heavy partiers, like really just kind of like going out, having drinks with people, having beers and chatting. And I was like, well, since I'm good at that, like I'll just give out free beer. And that's definitely how I started. That no one else can do that though, unless they live in New Orleans. Before filming, like, do you get anxious, or how do you feel beforehand? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I know you said something similar, and Justin said something similar too. Our brain looks for every reason to not go out and do it on some days. The mental side of it is probably the hardest part of it all. Is with everything that we know and everything that we see, it can be really hard to go out there with a positive attitude and still kind of see the good in people. So what I find helps me is like, definitely before it got super, super cold, just making sure I exercise before I go. I love to walk. So I'll do like a 10K walk. And while I'm doing that, I'm kind of like scoping out areas to talk to people in that are quiet away from a road, and also looking for potential people to talk to. So I just make sure I do those things, so that when I'm sat down, I know that, okay, I can just dedicate my time to that and I feel relaxed. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I do. And then also asking them questions, talking to them a little bit, before you start recording for as long as they want to, and then asking them, are you happy for us to start recording? I've started doing what you and Justin, I think, is asking what they're passionate about. When you see somebody sitting down, like there was one guy that I interviewed and he was sitting down and like blasting music, Maurice, the crossing guard. And he was listening to Bruce Springsteen, and I love Bruce Springsteen. So I was
Perfect.
like, oh, are you listening to Bruce Springsteen? And then we just started talking. And then I told him what I was actually doing out walking. And then he said, oh, he would like to do it. And then same with another person. You kind of like, he sat down beside me because I was having a little break, couldn't find anyone to talk to. And he sat down and started talking to me, and he was having a rough day. So we started talking, and then I asked him if I could film him. So yeah.
You're having a rough day. Listen to these pigs in a gas chamber. Come on, Maurice.
Yeah. Yeah. So just kind of like doing, again, part of like what you first asked, doing whatever fits into your kind of lifestyle, doing what you like to do anyway, and incorporating some of the outreach into that.
Do you have any tips for people for effective communication? I saw that you said that you hadn't always been like a good communicator. So yeah, what tips do you have for people?
Don't get overwhelmed with like the equipment. And like, I think Michael said this in one of the podcasts we did from the victim's perspective, that if you've thought about it for like a year, just go out and do it. That's long enough. You're not going to come to any sort of conclusions by thinking about it any longer. I feel like I'm a very bad communicator, but I'm trying. And I don't know why I decided to try on the camera, like in front of the camera. Like,
yeah, there's like a couple layers there.
Yeah. So, nobody's perfect, and it's better to get out there and do it and just get better as you go along. It doesn't, your videos don't have to be perfect, and your outreach doesn't have to be perfect. But yeah, the main things: learn the arguments, think about what outreach looks like for you. Don't get bogged down with what other people are doing, and just get the basics that you need. Use what you already have. And the other thing I would say too is like there's so many facts out there with the health and environmental side of it, that it's really, you can get confused who said which quote, which quote comes from which body of which school or whatever. But just knowing like the top 2 or 3 in the environmental and the health can really help as well.
Yeah, definitely. And all those things are linked in Earthling Ed's ebook as well. He like tells you where to find these resources, and the nutrition has like videos about like iron and protein and all that stuff. Yeah, so definitely that is a good resource. Okay, so Justin said in his like outreach video that his mind is constantly racing, like even during outreach. Does that happen to you, or are you more like present? How would you describe it?
Probably a bit of both. Your mind is racing because you kind of where what point the person's going to make, that you have to potentially have some sort of question to raise to them to make them think about it. So in that way, your mind is racing because you kind of you want to be able to bring the conversation back to the ethics or whatever it is. But I probably do that like 40% of the time is what's happening in my head, and 60% of the time I think I'm trying to be present and just establish a little bit of a human connection. Because I don't know, I do think people are good people, and I like spending time like listening to people's stories, what like where they are in their journey, or listening to what their concerns are about veganism. And I think that's really important, because we have all this knowledge now, and we've had opportunity to learn about it, but they still could be faced with the same questions that we always get faced with. But just taking the time, and that's hard. It's hard not to just come at them with a rebuttal for everything, but taking the time to listen to their concerns and meet them where they're at. For me, that's a hard part, but I feel like I try and do that more and more.
Yeah, I definitely think you do that. Like, I've never watched you and been like, why are you interrupting, or anything like that. So yeah, I think you're doing good with that. Another thing I wanted to ask is, it seems like everyone's really nice to you. Do you think that's you, or are Canadians nicer?
I think it's where you are. I think it's a city thing because,
Mm,
city folk are more exposed to the, you know, a lot more plant-based foods, obviously, but a lot more of the news that's out
dirty
there.
liberals.
Yeah, probably that some people might call it that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I started doing outreach, I was in Melbourne and I found there was pretty much similar to here with people being kind of like open to
Mhm.
what the facts were around animal agriculture. And I think it's a city thing. I think it would be quite different if you were in where are the places, what's the beef producing state in the
Like
US?
Iowa or I mean
Yeah.
all of the Midwest. But yeah, maybe that's part of why people aren't as nice to me is because most of them are visiting that I talked to from like a lot of these rural places. On Vegan Gaze stream, you mentioned that there were like two times where you felt like you didn't put out the right energy and people did react badly. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what was the difference in your energy then versus what you try to do?
I think those times, I remember it was a really, really hot day and I didn't walk as much as I should have walked in the
Mhm.
morning. And I was just trying to kind of like dodge the sun and like try and stay like in the shade. And I think I was a bit rushed as well. So it was more probably felt like an interrogation to
Mm,
them. So it was, me like not maybe I don't even think I took the time to talk to them beforehand. It was more like, oh, they were both walking their dogs. And I was like, oh, you're an animal lover, would you like to sit down and talk about animals kind of thing? And maybe I just rushed into it too much, didn't listen. For the most part, if people do sit down, they've been quite nice.
Yeah, yeah, I think that initial rapport building is really important, like pretty much whenever. And then another thing I was curious, like when you're talking to someone, are you like reading their body language or their tone, or like how do you try to work with that?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, see if they're like, look relaxed, look like if they want to be there, what parts of veganism they might want to talk about. But that's something I'm learning for sure, how to like read people's body language. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. I think what I do more than that is I try to just feel how they're feeling, sort of, but then I'm wondering if I'm just feeling how I'm feeling. Because, like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, that was a really uncomfortable interview. And then I'll watch it back and they don't seem that uncomfortable. So I'm like, I don't know how much is like just in my mind. So yeah, it's hard to tell the difference for sure. How do you know what questions to ask people?
I think I just go, like you said, go with the feeling of like when
yeah.
you've spoken to them beforehand. If you just ask that question, like what are they passionate about? You can kind of get an idea of like, what their interests are, what kind of person they are. Are they open-minded? Do they seem like liberal-minded or, so kind of like ask them the thing is like, oh, do you want to be part of it? If they seem liberal-minded, do you want to be part of the change or do you want to wait for others to change and then to follow that kind of stuff for the more liberal people? And then if somebody's like coming up with all the common misconceptions, then that you just stick with the facts. So then you just want to be giving them the facts. So kind of just seeing what type of person they are. You can gather pretty quickly what kind of upbringing they've had, what parts they've already been kind of conditioned to think, and then just kind of like target the questions according to the little bits of information they've given you.
Yeah, I would kind of chalk that up to, practice, right? Is like you kind of learn what to say as you go and things like that.
Yeah, so you've kind of covered it already. I guess, like, what are the main things you would say to someone who's thinking about doing outreach?
You mean just outreach or like filming videos, doing outreach?
Filming, like yeah, basically like what we do, which
I do want to make the point you said in your other interview, you're not good with technology. I'm not really good with technology either. So, like, if we can do it, I think
other people can, for
Yeah.
sure.
See what you're good at and what is within your means to do, and then just kind of like make a plan in your head how you want your outreach to look like, and then get just the basics or use what you already have. I mean, people probably are, you'd need a microphone. If you already have a phone, you need a microphone
Hmm.
and a tripod.
That's it.
And yeah, that's really it. So if you've been thinking about it for a while, just get out there and do it because you only get better from practicing from
Hmm.
doing it. It's you can talk to friends and family about it, and yeah, that's another thing is you don't get very far with a lot of times friends and family. We all know that. We all know that it's harder to convince friends and family about going vegan than it
Oh
might
yeah.
be strangers. And like you said many times, invest your time with the people that potentially might change. And sometimes that is strangers, and it is so fulfilling, so satisfying to know. I think that's the best part of doing activism and outreach, is that you could have walked by that person and they would have potentially never thought about it,
Yeah.
and could go their whole lives without even considering the plight of animals. So just the ability to change people's lives when you talk to them, and also have, your own eyes opened up to what people's fears are, is amazing. And you can really only get that from talking to people right now, because of COVID and having a lack of interaction and lack of human connection. It's such a great time to go out there and talk to people. Most people want to talk, and they really do. And even if they don't want to talk to you on camera, you have your outreach material with you. Like, I talk to more people off camera than I do on camera. But it's still a great opportunity, and these are all opportunities to change, to change people's lives. So yeah, just make use. When we live in these countries where we're able to do this kind of stuff, a lot of places we can't do it. You have to make use of it. Just play to your strength.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people say like, oh, vegans are privileged, and like, I don't agree in the sense that they're using, but we are privileged. We have the ability to do this. We have the time to do this. Like, we're in the perfect time period. Like, all the really good substitutes are out, but there's still a huge disconnect between, people don't know that. So yeah, we really need to hit the ground running. And I agree with you. I think that is the best part about outreach, is just kind of like watching someone change in front of you and having them leave. And like, yeah, those good conversations really make up for all the bad ones, I think.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's pretty much all I have. So everyone watching, make sure to check out Sheena's channel. It's really good. She's doing everything right. But remember, it took her 4 years to get her stuff up on YouTube after doing activism. So don't feel like you're far behind. And if you do want to start doing it yourself, take some of the tips from this video. I think they've been really, really helpful.
If you enjoyed this, hit that like button. Special thanks to my morally superior patrons, Amy, Andy, Deepak, and Rebecca.